who will start and run us through the presentation.
Don, were you going to mention recording?
Yes, that's the other thing I missed, was that we are also going to be recording the session. So we'll be recording it, and then we will be making that available also on our webpage. Thanks, Barb.
All right, well, thank you, Don, for giving us the welcome and introduction remarks. I would just like to walk us through the agenda for today. Barb, if you can kindly show us the agenda. Okay. All right, so the agenda today is as follows. Leslie Jardine, the manager for EPIC program, is going to lead us in the land acknowledgement. And I'm going to read the African Ancestral Acknowledgement, followed by our homelessness prevention funding overview, which will focus on two main categories, the shelter diversion and eviction prevention program. And then I'm going to speak to you a little bit about the application support process and engage us in some Q&A questions about the call for application for today. Okay. Please welcome Leslie Jardine as she leads us in the land acknowledgement. Leslie, over to you.
Thanks, Ruth. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. We acknowledge the land that we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishwaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Ruth?
Great, thank you so much, Leslie. African Ancestral Acknowledgement. The City of Toronto acknowledged all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants either in this generation or in generation past, and those who of us came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. Thank you. I'm now going to go into the funding overview. So you're probably wondering, what is this funding call about, the homelessness prevention? The funding objective for this call for application is to really focus on three main areas. The first one is to facilitate housing options and support for diverse communities through funding partnership that one will provide a range of opportunities for nonprofit, community-based organizations to provide a variety of housing support and homelessness services to residents. The second piece is to build and strengthen a responsive, housing-focused, and people-centered homelessness services while shifting towards a more sustainable, permanent, and affordable housing solution. The last one is to have a funding objective that would be specific to supporting Indigenous and Black-led projects and organizations. The homelessness support. The homelessness support program will focus on two main action and service delivery. The first one will focus on the Housing TO 2020-2030 action plan, key objective to reduce homelessness through a greater focus on prevention and diversion from homelessness. It will also focus on a strategic direction 3, which focus on preventing homelessness and improve pathways to housing stability by ensuring an effective and housing-focused emergency response to homelessness. Secondly, to better connect people experiencing homelessness to housing and support. And thirdly, to develop strategies and programs that meet the needs of specific populations. What are the funding goals? The funding goals that we hope to achieve through this call for application is 1, enhance service quality and impact through ongoing performance management, increase housing stability for people exiting homelessness or at risk of homelessness, and most importantly, to work collaboratively with the City of Toronto to ensure that targets and key deliverables are met. So the funding term, I'm pretty sure most of you are very eager about the funding term and how much money we have allotted to this funding call. So the funding available in this category is approximately 2.3 million annually. The project term is 2.5 years, effective October 1st, 2022 to March 31st of 2025. All project proposals will be received through the Toronto Grants Rebate and Incentive Portal, commonly known as TGRIP. Materials and instructions will be provided. TGRIP application sessions will be held separately. In terms of the proposal content, we looked for organization to demonstrate in the application that outcomes and targets are clear and achievable, that the quality of the work plan, including timelines, show an understanding of the scope of work. And I just want to pause here to really say, we strongly encourage you to really visit the appendix resources that we're going to provide. It will give you some more details in terms of how to complete your work plan. We're also hoping that the proposal content will give us an overview about the financial stability and oversight of the organization, and also demonstrate experience in collective impact and building community partnerships. We're also looking for the proposal to have experience and capacity to work with people with histories of homelessness, and willingness to increase knowledge and skills through participation in training opportunities. Now, just to go back a little bit on the budget piece, the financial stability and oversight, we're hoping that the application will have an understanding of the dedicated human resources as well as other resources needed to achieve outcomes and targets pertaining to the experience and capacity. The service provider can demonstrate experience working with people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness using a client choice, culturally competent, and harm reduction approach. What are we going to be looking for in terms of the assessment process? One thing that I do want to stress is that the grant team is very much committed to ensuring that all proposals received are evaluated using a housing first, human rights, harm reduction, people-centered, and equity lens. We're also going to ensure that the assessment process will include principles that are based on the Housing TO Action Plan, SSHA service plan, meeting in the middle engagement strategy, and action plan to confront anti-Black racism. Project application received will be ranked in the Toronto Grant Rebate and Incentive Portal, TGRIP, and supplementary evaluation tools will be created for the review panels in consultation with SSHA, the City Indigenous Office, and the CABR unit expert. So timelines, Dawn mentioned earlier that we're going to be launching the program March 28, 2022. That's next week, Monday. We will have a virtual information session, this is the second one today, March 23rd, 2022. There's more to come. We have additional 4 more to come. We have 6 call for application altogether. But we also will have application help desk information session, which we're hoping to launch April 14th and the 28th of 2022. More information will be posted on our website in terms of how to register for this information. And for those of you who have attended the information session today, we will post this on our website, and we will send you email with those for those who are registered for the information session today regarding the application help desk information session. Deadline for written questions from agencies is May 4th, 2022. Funding submission deadline is May 24th of 2022. Decisions will be sent to agencies in the month of July 2022. And again, the funding term, as echoed before, is going to be 2.5 years, effective October 1st, 2022 to March 31st of 2022. I do also want to pause here. I did mention that we have a deadline for agencies to submit questions to us by May 4th, but the city also has a commitment to respond, and we will respond to the frequently asked questions no later than May 11th, 2022. So on that note, I've spoken a lot. I would like to turn it over to the manager of the EPIC team, Leslie, to provide us an overview about the homelessness prevention, which will focus on 2 key areas: eviction prevention and shelter diversion. So Leslie, over to you.
Thanks, Ruth. So this might be this next section of the presentation is an opportunity to understand and determine whether or not your agency is interested or a good match to submit your application for funding. This is an area that I'm completely passionate about, having led the EPIC program for the last 5 years. And so for some of you in the audience, I'm sure you've traveled with me on that pathway, and others that are perhaps curious or interested in finding out more and want to join the team. So let's get started, which really saying what is homelessness prevention. And for some of us, often that means a shelter bed, and those days are shifting. That mindset is shifting to focusing more on prevention and specifically eviction prevention, but also probably introducing a new term, which is shelter diversion. And both of them are really critical strategies that the city has identified to minimize the flow of people entering into homelessness and reducing the pressure on the shelter system. We all know that housing is really what's important in people's lives. And so keeping it or helping them access it quickly and sustaining it long term is really where the shift in funding and attention is moving towards. Barb, could you move to the next slide? Narrative. Thanks. So just a little bit of definitions here. So what is eviction prevention? It's, again, a really, the best way to define it is an early intervention strategy to prevent homelessness. So just imagine that it's people who are already continue to have their housing, but are at risk of losing it. Typically that's financial, they're behind in their rent, but it could be for other reasons why they're at risk of losing their housing and entering into homelessness. Next slide. So the other key aspect of homeless prevention is shelter diversion. And again, it's an early intervention strategy intended to prevent homelessness. But where this differs is that it's working with individuals and families who perhaps are homeless but haven't yet entered the shelter system. And so it's focused supporting those individuals who need housing support to access new housing and to stabilization support. So imagine situations where you're a youth and you're aging out of the child welfare system. Perhaps you've been incarcerated for a period of time and you're being released soon, so exiting the correctional institutions. Perhaps you're new to the country and you're residing with an acquaintance or a family member, and you just need a little bit of help to understand and settle and secure new housing. You could have lost your place and are currently staying with friends or family, or perhaps paying for a hotel room. Again, looking at opportunities to divert people away from emergency shelter system and helping them secure housing. Next slide. So this graphic is intended to give you a little bit of what are the similarities and differences in that housing, stable housing continuum. Eviction prevention is really an upstream phase. So certainly at that moment where there's a risk factor and people are still in their housing unit, that's what we refer to as eviction prevention. Again, don't focus necessarily on the financial piece. It could be behavioral. It could be other reasons why their housing might be at risk. The shelter diversion is really where people are precariously housed. They can't stay there very long. It's sort of couch surfing, might be a term that you're familiar with, but both have a time constraint. Eviction prevention could be more of an issue of what stage is the eviction at? Is it just at the early stage where the landlord is given notice, or is the sheriff coming tomorrow, right? That spectrum of timeliness can happen at any point, really, first warning or the 11th hour. When it comes to shelter diversion, it's really how long people can stay where they currently are and search for housing from that point. So how long they're able to temporarily stay at that location, but it leads to a new tenancy. So you're really doing your housing search and supporting that individual to secure that housing. Both require support and both must lead to sustainable housing. And so those are sort of to give you a sense of what the differences are, but what are the similarities in homelessness prevention, utilizing both an eviction prevention approach and a shelter diversion. And next slide, Barb. So you might be asking yourself, is this a good fit for me, my agency? And some of you might be doing services that either identical or very close to or complementary to this work. So just from my own perspective, legal services, you might be part of that sector. You're probably all of the agencies or services listed on the screen are typically first point of contact. When somebody is in trouble or at risk or concerned, they usually go to community agencies that they're familiar with and seek help. It may be not necessarily the first, they may not identify that they're housing at risk. They may present as a different factor that brings them to your door. But you might want to consider your work that you're currently doing now. Would entering into a program delivering shelter diversion or eviction prevention complement the work that you're already doing? So for me, I'm thinking that if you're in these sectors, you already have perhaps the knowledge base, the skill base to do this type of work and are excited about getting into or changing or expanding for that matter into these areas. Next slide, graphic. Thanks. Program model. You just wanted to clarify that a centralized city team, City of Toronto team, will be managing all the requests, service requests for eviction prevention or shelter diversion services. That's been engineered out, so to speak, and that really your submission would be focusing on what services you would be providing out in the field in either one or both of those fields. So are you interested in doing eviction prevention? Are you interested in doing shelter diversion? Or perhaps you'd like to submit 2 applications to do both. But what I'd like to emphasize though is that you might have a specialization, a particular neighborhood that you support, or a client group that you feel is at greater risk, or core client group of your organization, perhaps the seniors or youth, Indigenous as are examples. And keep that in mind, because as we go through the presentation, there'll be more specific requirements that must be included in your application, but there is still opportunity for you to give add a bit of specialization to your proposal, your submission to the proposal. So next slide, Barb. Yep, that's good. So graphics, I'll just go through each one. The map of the city is really to flag for you that it is an expectation that the service that you deliver, if successful under this submission, would require you to support individuals within the City of Toronto, not just within your current catchment area. So we don't always have the ability to understand or know where people are in need, and we need to adjust our resources to respond to that need. However, if we do recognize that you will have your own strengths and relationships that you have already established in your catchment area, your neighborhood of your agency that supports, but there would be an expectation that if needed, that you could be serving an individual household that is outside of your direct community. The car is symbolizing that because you could be servicing the whole city, access to reliable and quick transportation, and a vehicle is an asset, particularly if you're trying to cross the city where transportation may not be as frequent or as reliable using public transit. The group of the 4 individuals underneath the car is really to symbolize that this is an in-person direct client contact. This is not a remote. We don't operate remotely or virtually in delivering the services of eviction prevention or shelter diversion. We go to the client, so meeting with them at their home or where they're currently residing. There's obviously, in the housing search, it would be meeting up with landlords, providing access to other services that may require an accompaniment, depending on the level of support that the individual needs. Availability, this is not, although most of the work happens between a Monday to Friday work schedule, there are certainly situations that would warrant working outside of those hours, whether that's in the evening or on the weekends. And so that is an expectation that if you're interested in submitting a proposal for this submission, that you would be required to offer that availability. And the calendar there is really to again, emphasize that homelessness continues throughout the year, 365 days. And so we are looking, it's expected that an agency would always have staff available, even during agency shutdowns, perhaps when your agency might shut down over the holidays or for a week or two during the summer. The expectation is that the EPIC or shelter diversions programs would continue to operate during those time periods. Perhaps on a reduced number of staff, but still be available to respond if and when needed. Next graphic slide. So staffing requirements. This might be a little bit different in the sense that perhaps in the past you identified your staffing model. We're going to be more deliberate this time and recognize that the importance of having a dedicated supervisor to oversee programs that have direct service delivery to clients and residents of Toronto. So your proposal, your submission should have a dedicated supervisor. 100% of the time would be dedicated to delivering the program, not split between any other program that your agency is offering. That's the supervisor role is key. There's case management that's needed on a day-to-day basis. If you can imagine, some of these cases could be quite time sensitive and need immediate support and not something that can be addressed tomorrow or next week. So having the supervisor available to provide case consultation, support to the staff delivering the service in the field is really critical. There is the housekeeping stuff, reconciling reports or requests for additional benefits. Doing that audit and quality assurance are key functions as well of this position. When it comes to caseworker assignments, we've sort of, and not to throw you off, but we're looking at teams that have at least 3 people, 100% dedicated. The rationale behind that is that, like any operation, people go off on vacation, unplanned absences, and so that there isn't a service disruption if in fact any of those situations happen. Don't limit yourself to 3, but that's the minimum. You could decide that you'd like to have a team of 6 caseworkers and 1 supervisor. That's a little bit of flexibility that you can include in your submission and tell us about how that would function. The primary responsibilities for the caseworker are working in the field. They have direct contact with clients. They're negotiating with landlords. They're accompanying individuals to those appointments. They might be participating in the landlord-tenant board hearing as a support to that individual. Obviously, the traditional or standard fare of completing case notes, accessing and making referrals to income support programs, other agencies that provide support to provide a more comprehensive support to help stabilize that housing. and ultimately building capacity, knowledge, and with the clients so that they can prevent the likelihood of it situation reoccurring. And again, next slide, Barb. So caseloads kind of give you a sense about what workload to expect. You'll notice that the range is 10 to 20. It's quite fluid in the sense that some cases might move faster than others. Some clients might have additional vulnerabilities or complexities in their situation. But plan for that the caseload for each worker would be 10 to 20 cases. That could be an individual or household. So really, again, who is intending to live together and or are living together, and that's your case, whether it's an individual, single person, or multiple people in the household. The expectation from a outcome perspective is that 25% of your case will turn over for each worker. So as an example, if one worker has 10 to 20 on their caseload, then 4 to 5 cases would be closed each month. A little bit faster probably for eviction prevention, might be harder or longer time period for shelter diversion, particularly in the housing market that exists in Toronto right now. But ultimately, both of them are aligned to achieving housing, either sustaining that housing or securing new housing. Next slide, Barb. There's some tools and resources that we're going to give you. So you don't have to factor into your submission that you need a database. We're going to provide it with you. We do continue to use Smiths. So if you're familiar with that, then that's one less thing to worry about. But if you're not, we would be providing the onboarding and training, not only about how to use that system, the database, but also any other training specific to the work of shelter diversion or eviction prevention and the onboarding of that. When it comes to financial resources, to secure tenancies, it's about money, where's the money? And we will identify those resources that would be available depending on the person's eligibility. We do have access to that, and that would be part of the resources that you would receive if you were successful in the bid submission. Now, there are supports already that you might be familiar with to sustain tenancies, and that could be, follow-up programs, to help people sustain their tenancies, furniture bank, voluntary trusteeships. Those sort of supports exist and can be accessed if you were doing eviction prevention or shelter diversion. And from a community of practice, we work as a team, and so we've already put in place a community practice so that staff individually and collectively can share resources, brainstorm, troubleshoot, and it's our way to bring new information and new resources, and that happens on a monthly basis. And it would be expected that your team, your supervisor, and your staff would participate in that on the frequency that they're scheduled. Now, when it comes to building your own budget, these are the things that you would need to include if you don't already have them as a standard tool for your staff in your organization. The phone is symbolizing that you really need to be, you need phones. Staff need to connect in the moment and be reachable. So it's not an office-based position. So think all of your technology should be portable. So the phone, whether it's a laptop or a tablet, having data is really critical. Many of the clients that you'll be supporting do not have access to technology, and data particularly is a gap, and the staff would be using their data and technology tools to support a client in their home. As an example, to link on to the landlord-tenant board hearing, it's all virtual these days, nothing is in person, or applying for applications online. Again, those tools are really critical in being successful in the work that you do. The symbol below the phone is really intended to be, you might need to build in your budget transportation expenses, costs for clients. So that's bus tickets, Presto card, maybe taxis if it was needed to get somebody somewhere fast, if it was critical in supporting a positive outcome. Grocery gift cards are a really great way of being able to divert the client's money towards the rent and offset, fill a gap in food vouchers just to be able to meet the obligations of the landlord, if that's what it would take to resolve the tenancy, or bridge them until perhaps a new benefit like a housing allowance was kicking in. And finally, you never know what you need in a moment, and it could be really, so those miscellaneous requests. So do consider a budget line for those sort of items. As an example, we might have had to buy storage bins for somebody who might have a hoarding issue. And if that was part of their issue with their housing being at risk, then we need it in the moment in order to be able to demonstrate that the landlord that the client is committed to making change, and here's we're demonstrating to do it, and we're supporting the client to get that done as quickly as possible. That's it for that slide, and I think that is it for my presentation portion. I do believe at the end we'll have an opportunity to open the floor for additional questions, and no doubt you'll have some. But I'm excited to be working with hopefully a few of the staff and organizations that we're currently working with, that they want to continue to work with us, but also some new faces and agencies so that we can do even more, help people keep their housing at a greater rate than we are now, right now. So back to Ruth, and she's going to talk about the whole application support, how to submit your bid, your proposal through TGRIP.
Thank you so much, Leslie. That was a great overview about the shelter diversion and the epic prevention program. So I'm now going to bring back your attention about the next step, how to submit your application. Next slide, please, Barb. So for this funding opportunity, all agencies will be using the City of Toronto Online Grant Management Tool, as commonly known as TGRIP, which stands for Toronto Grants Rebate and Incentive Portal, to submit the application. The City of Toronto Online Grant Management Tool, called TGRIP, can be found at the secure login address at the top of this slide here, which is cot.smartsimple.ca. If your organization, which most of you are, is familiar with TGRIP, that is great. All you would need to do is use your email and log in to basically log in. If your organization isn't new to TGRIP, that is also okay. All we need you to do is to register by clicking on this red register icon here, which is circled in red. And you can register to have your username and password. You can find information about how to register on the City Housing and Homelessness Grant webpage, and we will provide the link to the webpage at the end of the presentation. This slide. After your organization is registered with TGRIP, you'll be able to see your funding opportunity offered by city divisions by clicking on My Funding Opportunity tab, which is circled in red here. The number above the word My Funding Opportunity will tell you how many funding opportunities are currently open. In this case, number 4, this number will change when new funding opportunities open and others close. So I want to place a little bit of emphasis here. After clicking on My Funding Opportunity tab, you will see a list of funding opportunities that are currently open. For this funding call, Homelessness Prevention Project, including Eviction Prevention and Shelter Diversion Project, please select the Homelessness Prevention HAS 2022-2025 funding opportunity. Before clicking to apply, please download the application guide, and you can click on the application guide by just basically hyperlinking into the view guidelines. Funding opportunities, This will also allow you to also save this on your desktop or any place that you wish to save it so you can go back to it. It is essential to follow the application guide to help you to properly complete all aspects of your application. After downloading your application guide, click on Apply button now. So you can click on the Apply button and you can proceed to the next. In terms of the next step, after you click Apply, you will need to complete the eligibility checklist confirming that your organization is a nonprofit operating in Toronto. And then click in the checkbox if your organization meets the eligibility requirements, and then click Begin the application. I'm not going to go into depth and read everything, but basically all we're asking for is just to read the eligibility checklist, declare that your organization is meet the criteria above, and just click on Begin your application for the next step. So this is a place where I want to place a great emphasis also. After clicking Begin Application, you will have to create an application with you will have created an application with a unique TGRIP application ID. Please do take a note of the application ID number so that you and your colleagues can keep working on this application over time. And I stress that, we have had in the past that we have had numerous applications, so we just want to really emphasize that. Just take a note of the application ID, share that with your colleagues or whoever's working on the application call so you can revisit that after. Do not click on My Funding Opportunities again unless you want to start a new application for a different project. Instead, find your draft application by scrolling down to the heading Application Attention Required, then look on your application ID in the list below that heading. Click on the application ID number to open your draft application. And just a friendly reminder, always please save before navigating away from the page that you are working on so you don't lose any information that you have entered. All right, I'm almost there. In terms of what support and resources would you need? Application guide. I can't stress this enough. Please, for a successful application, we humbly request your attention to the application guide, familiarize yourself with that. You have access to Appendix A, which will speak to the program model, homelessness prevention. You will have Appendix B, which will give you detailed information about what we're looking for that Leslie also spoke about in terms of the budget and the work plan. You have Appendix C, definitions about the work plan. And, we also will have information sessions. As noted before, we plan to have information sessions April 14th and the 28th. Please do check the website for update on our housing support and homelessness grant for more information. Thank you so much for making time to listen to us today.